I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. You should be loco-centric. You should do what the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga does, and that is to think Nooga-centrically, to be Nooga-centric, thinking that Chattanooga, because you happen to be in it or near it, is the center of the universe. You're not here by mistake. You're not here by coincidence, happenstance, chance, or by power of contingency. I would say you're here by God's providence, and you have a purpose here and a duty here. So commit, you, my listener, to being here and making the city a better place. But do that not in a sense of civic obligation, but do it by thinking about your customer, thinking about your family, your neighbor, the poor, and the oppressed, of which there are many in Chattanooga. And we'll hear about some of them today on the program. David Toulis. We'll hear about Moriel Woods, and we'll hear about Valdacia Whaley, two people in separate parts of the region who are under an oppression of long-standing, an ancient claim by the white race against the black race that is still in progress. It is still in progress, even though many well-meaning conservatives react by saying, well, I've never owned slaves and I've never said an unkind word to a black person. Those things may be true, and we certainly encourage grace between the races and respect, a special respect for members of the race opposite of you, right? So if you're a black, you should have respect to whites. If you're a white person, you have give, I would say, always a special deference to a person who's black, because that black person is descendant from a race that had been enslaved by whites as a matter of principle, enslaved not because of a debt or a crime, but for a metaphysical reason, because that person has more I'm going to say melatonin, more pigment, more black pigment in his skin than you do. That person is congenitally and genetically and morally inferior, socially inferior to you, and thereby subject to you, and can't be free. Now, I don't want to belabor that, because I want to look at something else. But first, we have something from Russell Stroud, our news director.
Right. This is just coming in. A person was apparently injured on Friday morning in a shooting at an Ocala high school, according to deputies. It happened at Forest High School on Merricamp Road. Now, this is Marion County, Florida, not Marion County, Tennessee, just to be clear. This is in Ocala, Florida. The Marion County Sheriff's Office said that the victim was treated by medics at the scene. Ocala.com reported that a student shot a classmate in the leg, and deputies say that the suspected shooter was taken into custody. So one person injured, one person shot in this Marion County high school in Florida, Ocala, Florida, and the shooter has been apprehended, according to reports from the scene. Thank you.
David Toulis here. We're arguing for a local economy in the free markets. Near is better than far, small than big, simple than complex. And down in the footnotes at 5-point type, very small type in the Helvetica font, my favorite font there is personal is better than corporate, and physical is better than abstract. Brought to you by yournews.com, and the number is 800-8949. If you have any kind of reaction to what you've heard about or read about regarding Mayor Andy Burke's State of the City speech, please feel free to pipe in 800-8949, 800-8949. I think if we live by principle, we'll do better personally, we'll do better before God, and we'll have perhaps less to repent for, less to regret later, even though living by principle now sometimes is burdensome and brings tribulation and difficulty. I think back in the early 2000s, when I got rid of a Social Security number, it required me, since I was a licensee of the Department of Safety, to change an answer on the driver license renewal form, and it said Social Security number, and I said none, because I had affected under rescission of contract that to change my legal status to elevate my legal status to being a person without a number, and had done that by rescission, by action in rescission of contract or property right. And relation that came upon me that lasted for 2 or 3 years, with much distress to family, my wife Jeanette. But I was living by principle, and I think sometimes I'm criticized for that. And I'm thought by my children. I have 4 children. to be kind of an idealist. But that is really how we should all be, especially if you're a Christian. You are an idealist. You are constantly seeing things wrong. Why? Because you're seeing the way things should be based on God's commands, right? God's commands outlines what your life is supposed to be like, what the life in the city is supposed to be like. And so we are constantly discontented with the way things are and looking in the direction of reform. Now, most Christians, I think, in the United States are not attuned to that anymore. They've been trained by their pastors and by their elders and deacons to think that Christianity and the gospel applies only to the individual. And so in the end, it has become a very privatized, subjective system of religious belief in God, who cares only about the individual. And Christians today have nothing to say and no concern about the larger scene, no concern about culture, the arts, medicine, warfare, manufacturing, technology, the day of rest. There's very little that Christians are concerned about anymore. They're just concerned about personal salvation, personal holiness. And so if you are a believer, you should think about the larger picture. I'm thinking here about Michael Bowman. He's a man who lives in Columbia City, Oregon, and has been involved in conflict with the IRS for many years. Over what? Well, he opposes, according to LifeSiteNews.com, the taxpayer funding of killing of babies. Now, babies are killed legally thanks to the Supreme Court. The Roe v. Wade decision, written by members in good standing in Christian churches, almost all of them in the Roe v. Wade court back in 1973, members in good standing of Christian churches. And from what I've read in that field, none ever were ever indicted in clerical or ecclesiastical lawsuits by their elders or pastors for the sin of writing Roe v. Wade, which was based on false facts, by the way, false facts. Bowman is 53. He's a Christian, and he's a contract engineer living in Columbia City. And he has not filed tax returns, 1040, or paid federal taxes since 1999. And he says, I'm not a tax protester. I love my country. He's telling the Oregonian newspaper, I have a duty to my country. I have a duty to my conscience. Now, the IRS, of course, is alleging that he has a duty to file tax returns, though there is no liability statute in the federal code, the IRC Title 26. There is no liability statute that makes anyone liable to file tax returns. But what happens in court, when it gets to court, is that the penalty statute is enforced. That's how the IRS gets occasional victories against non-filers through the willful failure to file charge. That is what's filed against people who don't file. They're accused of doing it willfully. They knew they had an obligation to file, and the tax cases that have been pursued in federal court before juries have always alleged that you had a duty to file and you didn't, and you didn't, and because you didn't, you are charged with willful failure. The IRS sent Michael Bowman numerous warnings over the years, from 2002 to 2014. And in 2012, the Oregon Department of Revenue began garnishing money from his account. And so what did he do? Well, he just cashed his checks immediately and kept minimal amounts of dollars in his bank account. Now, the federal prosecutor in a case that did go, I think, following an indictment, argued that removing his income from the reach of taxing authorities was felony tax evasion. And it was alleged in the information or the indictment that he owed $356,000 more or less, and he was also charged with 4 counts of willful failure. His attorney, Matthew Schindler, argued that his client was fully transparent in every step of the way, from disclosing all of his paychecks to cashing them at his own bank under his own name. And so a couple weeks ago now, U.S. District Judge Michael Moosman sided with Bowman on the felony charges, ruling that the feds failed to show that he attempted to conceal income or to deceive the government. And so the government's free to reintroduce this charge. Bowman spoke with CBN News. He said, "First, I would love to pay taxes so as to have a normal life. However, our government is using the tax dollars to fund Planned Parenthood, which commits abortions, the death of the innocent. Apparently, a woman has a right to choose, but evidently I do not." And he says, "You see, the Constitution grants certain abilities to the government, e.g. funding the military, But killing children is not a constitutional backed compelling interest of the government by any stretch of the imagination. Planned Parenthood receives more than $500 million a year from the federal government and destroys more than 300,000 boys and girls. Federal law forbids taxpayer dollars from being directly spent on abortions, though pro-life groups argue that the money still enables abortion facilities to grow their reach and influence. My effort, he says, is about standing up, standing firm for my constitutional rights, and getting the government to honor Title 42, Chapter 21B, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, so that I may live a peaceful life and in the end face God and hopefully have him say, well done, good and faithful servant. So here's a man who is at great personal expense and distress to his own life. He's a contractor, a contract engineer, and a Christian. His wife has to deal with his distress, but he has a good conscience. Now, we are responsible for what we know. And my goal on my show here, the David Toulis Show, is to steep you in responsibility, because the more you know about the way the world really works, the more duty and obligation you have. And that's why I would like to suggest that you can't say you don't know things. You can't unknow things once I have told you about them, especially if they are about Chattanooga and Chattanooga people. And we're thinking here about Valdacia Whaley and the Jamichael Parks arrest, the Terrell Parks encounter with Deputy Dale Liner of the Bradley County Sheriff's Department on April 8th. We want to hear more about that. This girl, Valdacia Whaley, 17, was sexually abused. She was sexually abused by a deputy who prodded her privates in public, in a gas station in front of passing traffic. This is really just an amazing thing that happens. And there is an interest by John Wolf, the attorney in Chattanooga, who has you might say a civil rights interest. He is a Democrat, apparently he's kind of a liberal Democrat, but he has rightly an interest in this kind of case. So the question, I guess, for you is, on principle, how do we live out our ideals? How do we live out our principles? How can we make Chattanooga a better place? When you live out your ideals, you're living out your ideals in terms of, well, I would say you're living out God's ideals, okay? In terms of the gifts God gave to you, right? You, my listener, whether you believe in him or not, have gifts. We can agree on that. And he's given you occasions, he's given you motivations and means, and placed you in a social context, which limits what you do, of course, but also gives you opportunities that other people don't have, right? And so my goal here, as we talk about Mayor Burke's speech, the State of the City speech last night, my goal here is to raise the level of responsibility for you, my listener, as you know more about the true state of things and your obligation. You can't not pursue your creative duty. You can't not pursue your duty, I would say, before God, but you could say, if you're not a Christian, before my fellow men, before my customers, before people to whom I am responsible. This is David Toulis, and we are glad you're giving us just a minute of your time here at 92.7 FM. You report, and the world decides. You have a right, my listener, to film public officials in public, right? No public official has any expectation of privacy, and being filmed is not in any way impeding or interfering with a public function, especially a police function. Police can function in very tight quarters, and you have a duty on my behalf, right? You have a duty on my behalf to come in close and capture the story. You report, and the world decides. We're live on Facebook at Nooga Radio, live on YouTube, and of course on your smartphone. If you have the TuneIn Radio app, you can make us your default station. So whenever you open that app on your phone, you just tap it, and there we are, 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM HD4. You report, and the world decides. Now we have a report here for a minute with Russell Stroud, our news director.
Yeah, a person was injured on Friday morning. That's this morning at a shooting in Ocala. That's in Florida, in Marion County, Florida. According to deputies, that shooting was reported at Forest High School on Merricamp Road down in Ocala. The sheriff's office down there said that the victim was treated by medics at the scene, and the student apparently shot a classmate in the leg. That student who allegedly fired the shot has been taken into custody, and the student who was shot has been taken to the hospital for treatment. Law enforcement officers from the Ocala Police Department and the Marion County Sheriff's Office say that the FBI are at the scene. We expect this will make national news, and we have more updates on this in the 10-minute news, which is on from 12 to 1 here on Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. The Marion County Sheriff's Department told News 6 that students will not be participating in a scheduled walkout that was to occur today, which is the anniversary of the Columbine High School shooting that happened back in 1999. So there was going to be
Marion County here?
No, Marion County in Florida. Thank you for that. Yeah, just to clarify, it's Marion County in Florida, not Marion County in Tennessee. This is in Ocala, Florida, where this shooting occurred. Marion County told News 6 that students will not participate in this walkout that was scheduled to occur today, which is the anniversary of the Columbine shooting. Public high school students in Marion County apparently have the opportunity to exchange ideas and opinions, they said, for that scheduled walkout, but that is not going to happen. Deputies say that the suspected shooter was taken into custody, and the school was placed on lockdown because of that shooting. They asked citizens to avoid the area. Parents, they say, please stand by for further direction from the school on how to pick up your children. Again, this just came in this morning. Forest High School on Merricamp Road in Ocala, Florida. The Marion County, Florida Sheriff's Office said the victim was treated by medics, and we're expecting a phone call from a parent there. We'll give that to you as soon as we get it right here. Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Again, stay here for more details. We'll have more at 12 o'clock with the 10-minute news.
Russell and Val lead our morning news show at 6 o'clock every weekday at 6. We are here with the best of all national, international, state, and local news with Russ and Val. That's Russell Stroud, our news director. Every morning here, a 3-hour news program, all live, chit-chat free, twaddle free, intensely newsy, and covering the globe. That's here, a local and live newscast with no tripe and no wasted words, no chit-chat, and no ignorant back and forth among the radio staff of the mic. We have the best people, and we're here for you every day. Also, and as Russell was saying, we have a noon local newscast. And so you're out for a few minutes in your car. Just tune into that program at noon, following Mike Gallagher. And then at 1 o'clock, we have also Bloomberg Business. We have two great shows that and both of them just fitting the time. The first program is Power, Policy, Politics, and Law, with all the doings inside from a gigantic news staff.
We have on the line now Lisa, who has a child who's a student in Ocala. Lisa, tell me what's going on.
Well, situations like this are always, hard to understand. My daughter's not in the school where this has taken place, but the school system is really good about notifying the parents when something like this happens. And of course, your heart sinks as soon as you get that phone call. And, of course, I was immediately glad for that it wasn't my daughter's school. But at the same time, you're in panic that this is happening in your own backyard. And this did happen in the county that we live.
So what was the time between when you got the news and when you heard that the suspect had been apprehended? Was it immediate, or was there a delay there?
It was all in the same message. The school calls and says this is an emergency message from the Marion County School District. There's been a shooting at Forest High School, and the one student was injured with non-life-threatening injuries, and the shooter has been apprehended. And then the message went on to instruct parents not to go to the school, to gather their children at a local church, versus going to the school, that the school is on lockdown and there is a high police presence.
We're talking to Lisa, who's in Ocala, Florida, where there was just a shooting at a high school. One person shot, one person arrested in this shooting. Now, I got word that there was supposed to be a walkout in response to the Columbine shooting back in 1999, the anniversary of that. Is that the case?
Yeah, actually today was a scheduled walkout day where they were giving the students an opportunity to discuss gun violence and, reflect their opinion and their feeling on it. So it's extra shocking now that there's actually a shooting on the day that the students were to be discussing the importance of school safety and reporting strange behavior by other students. And I'm not about student policing, but I think there's a lot of indications that a student is struggling with this type of thought process or pattern. But, the stuff just can't be predicted, and it's just scary that it's happening in our own backyard. And it's something I worry about every day when my kid goes to school. And I as a parent, I don't like to have that worry.
Yeah, and this is now the second shooting that we've had just this year in Florida. First the Parkland one, and now this one. How does that make you feel that this is now the second one with your kids in these schools?
I wish I could say that I was surprised, but I'm not. The school district, like I said, is really good about keeping parents aware of what's going on. And I get these kind of calls on a regular basis. That not that it's an active shooter, but the schools of Marion County regularly are put on lockdown for various reasons. Most recently, just in the last couple of days, one of the schools, it may have even been this one, was on a lockdown because there was a shooting close to the school. And I don't picture us living in a violent environment, but I do get the calls quite frequently that the different schools within the school district are on codes, whether it be a yellow code, orange code, or a red code, but they're locked down in this area quite frequently.
And you had the student walkout that was just supposed to happen this very day. Is that going to be going on with other schools? Are your kids going to be participating in that, or is that something that's been canceled across the area?
I think it was a school district wide prepared event where each of the school districts were participating in the walkout. Which at the school that my daughter lives, we kind of joke that her school's in the middle of a cow pasture, because literally it is. So for her classmates to do a walkout, they were instructed to go into an open field parking lot area where they were going to have students an opportunity to deliver speeches that had been pre-written and, of course, pre-approved by the school staff. But I haven't heard if they are, not going to go forward with the other school districts on this planned walkout for today.
Okay, Lisa from Ocala, she has a kid in the area, fortunately not at this school. We're glad you're okay. We're glad your child is okay. Thanks for joining us.
My heart's with the family of not only the student that was injured today, but also with the family of the student who, took to this type of violence for whatever reason, because, their family is going to be suffering as well, just in a totally different way. And this gun violence in today's society is it's getting out of control. And I do not believe that guns should be taken from people. I don't think that guns kill people. People kill people. But we do have to do something in order to keep the guns out of the hands of these students.
I'm sure we'll get more word on that as the day progresses. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.